Welcome back, Flyers nitty-gritty fans, to a post-game review. The Philadelphia Flyers win their fifth game in a row, first time in 3.5 years against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and they are red hot, find themselves comfortably in a playoff spot. It is early, and they have games in hand, but this is a whole new season and a whole new game, and Flyers are looking damn good. Vasili, what do you think about today's game, my friend?
Flyers are looking good, obviously. I mean, 5-game winning streak, so that kind of speaks for itself when
Yep.
you put it into perspective there. It's kind of crazy to think under Danny Briere's regime, 5-game winning streak in his first season as the GM here,
Yeah.
and Chuck Fletcher had 0 5-game winning
And
streaks.
multiple 10-game losing streaks, actually.
Yeah, so just, that's something that I thought that was interesting to point out. But the Flyers are just rolling right now. And I mean, it obviously still is early in the season, so we have to be tempered in terms of, going
Sure.
overboard with these types of results. But aside from Columbus and I guess really Anaheim, who is 500, I mean, the Flyers, beating LA, Carolina, Vegas, those are some of the top tier teams in the NHL. So, for them to follow up on a back-to-back as well here and beat Columbus, I mean, obviously a huge 4 points for them this weekend.
Yep.
Another thing as well, 18 game sample size of this where, they've primarily in most games looked pretty good just in terms of generating scoring and just how they've been playing
Could have had
overall.
more. Could have had
Yeah.
more wins than what they had, to be honest. Sorry to cut
Yeah,
you off. Go ahead.
exactly right. Like obviously some games in terms of hockey where, they're not playing, let's say, the greatest or dominating the games, like in the LA Kings game. The Kings did have, some play where they controlled and the Flyers end up winning that one. But then you go back to their Sabres, matchup where they should have won. So that's hockey. Sometimes you don't always win the games that you're gonna outplay another team and vice versa. But I mean, for the Flyers, I don't think that going into this stretch, they would have penciled in. I mean, against LA specifically, Carolina and Vegas, 6 out of 6 points, and then 8 out of 8 points counting the Columbus game. So just an incredible stretch over the last week and a little bit here.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that you just broke that down. So just so everybody knows, a little update. The Penguins are beating Vegas as well, 3-0 right now. So Vegas is struggling a little bit. But I don't think that's necessarily indicative of the Flyers getting an easy opponent or anything like that. I think, good teams beat the teams they're supposed to win. And even though if you don't dominate a game, you come out with a win. You're not always going to dominate games, especially because, I mean, we said this in the preseason. This is a bubble playoff team. They are, 10-7-1 right now. They are playing I would say currently they're playing above that, but they've had some stretches where they didn't play amazing, but they've also had stretches where they probably should have won those games, like we were saying earlier. So while the Flyers sit with 21 points, easily they could have 24 points, I think, or maybe even
Yeah.
25 points. They left some points on the table. They obviously lost to a really weak team in San Jose. It happens. They weren't going to lose forever. San Jose also had a few more wins since then, so they're starting to turn their season around since they got reamed out by their GM. But let's talk about today's game, man. There's a lot of standouts today. Overall, first, let's give a shout out to Ryan Poehling. I mean, a goal, 2 assists, +3
Points,
tonight,
yeah.
almost 55% on the faceoff dot. Tortorella is giving him more responsibility, and it's paying off. And I know a lot of people don't like this juggling of Frost out and Brink out, and everybody's got their own opinions. Ryan Poehling is still young. We were saying it over and over again. He's the same age as the other guys on this team that are, in their mid-20s. He's got a lot more to give. And I think he's actually doing a really good job balancing the lineup. I mean, we'll see how it comes out, when Stahl comes back and Risto comes back, but nobody's played poorly, Frost included, right? Like nobody deserves to be benched, quite frankly. So he has these and he's been saying himself, tough decisions to make. I don't know if I would have made the same decisions, but at the exact same time, I mean, they're winning. They're playing well. And even on a back-to-back, I was a little surprised Stahl didn't play, but maybe he wants to get him ramped up a little bit more. But at the same time, like Zamula had some great plays today. Belpedio had an assist today.
Yeah.
Belpedio was a +2.
He's been playing really well.
Again, so let's talk about a little bit about Ryan Poehling. What did you think about him tonight?
Paling definitely stood out for me. I think that whole Brink, Farabee Paling line was probably their best tonight in general.
Three
And I mean,
goals tonight for them.
yeah, exactly, right. So you each of them score, so that's obviously a telltale sign.
Yep.
Paling gets the 3 point game. Farabee with 2 points himself. Bobby Brink 2 points. Really nice goal on the power play. Just kind of walking in, taking the shot, which is been the factor in their success on the power play, even dating back to yesterday, getting 2 goals, right? It's just about taking those shots. Obviously, I think they need to have more of a shooting mentality going forward. Still not perfect,
Yeah.
but I mean, they're kind of getting into doing that a little more, keeping it more simple on the power play. But that line was definitely their best. And Paling, I mean, I think ever since he's been moved up to the third line, he's obviously stepped up in terms of offensive production. He gets the goal the other night, 3 point night tonight. And him and Farabee are showing, some chemistry in terms of the forechecking together as well. Just being able to kind of hem other teams in on the forecheck, cycling pucks down low. So it's not a pretty game always from that line. I think when you add Brink to it, there's more creativity, kind of more skilled
Sure.
playmaking. But it is effective, right? Cycling the puck down low, being physical, using their forechecking ability, and that's all things that they're kind of using to their advantage in this game specifically. Um, for the Flyers, in this game, they score first once again.
Go
I know
Farabee.
Farabee scores first too. I know you mentioned I think 6 of his goals are first goals,
Yeah.
which is a pretty telling stat. Just that he's one of those guys that is getting the team going, kind of getting the team ramped up and to
Sure.
begin
Yeah.
games here. But even though like over the past 5 games, which is the 5 game winning streak here, they've scored first every single game. So it
Yep.
just shows that's been a recipe to their success. These quick starts, being able to score first, being able to capitalize on their chances early. And we kind of seen in the past in games that they've lost, right, where they would have early chances and couldn't kind of score, that would end up coming back to haunt them just because they might not be able to create similar types of opportunities later on in the game. So, the Flyers are being opportunistic early on when they're getting their chances here. And overall, they play a really good game. What did you think about Sean Walker's game today, Yariv?
I
Because he
love
had 2 assists as well.
I
So
love I love that you brought him up. I mean, I look, he could not be one. Him and Sealer have been very good today together. We before I talk about Walker again, like Nick Sealer already proved everybody wrong last season and just continues to do so. I mean, he is playing fantastic. Like, yes, he's never going to be an offensive dynamo, but as far as the defensive defensemen go, he has vastly exceeded expectations. And I think the combination works with Walker. And to be honest with you, I think Sean Walker, like we said this, and a lot of people want like rebuild and get rid of him. As of right now, I see a re-signing. I do
yeah,
not see
definitely could be a candidate.
yeah. Look, I'm not saying that they're definitely going to keep him. I don't know. But when you find something that works and you get a guy who exceeds expectations, as long as he's not expecting some kind of large contract, he doesn't have that type of reputation behind him. But if it works, it works. If it works under Tortorella. Now, you can make the argument the other way, and I hate just talking about him being traded, that if he's having a career year, you might end up getting a
A
lot more
first.
for him. So
Yeah.
that conversation will be had too. But if the Flyers are in the playoffs, I would not expect that, by the way, if they're even in the bubble range. But I think Sean Walker has been exceptional. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen a newcomer defenseman come in, fit this well. And, he's been a big reason why we haven't missed Provorov.
Yeah.
Like he has taken a lot of those responsibilities outside of obviously what Sanheim is doing. We can talk about him too, but Sean Walker is just doing it all. I mean, 2 assists again tonight. He's constantly putting up points. He's got, I think, 3 goals, 7 assists on the year. I think he's a plus player, if I
Yeah,
remember
he is. I
correctly.
think he's either
Plus,
plus 5 or 6.
yeah,
But
something like
after
that.
tonight, I think it's definitely going to be higher.
No, he's actually broke even, surprisingly.
Oh, okay, interesting.
But here, let me double check it. But I do think he has been really goddamn good. He's been everywhere. He's been super confident. We talked about it, that he has a feistiness to his game, the same way, like he's about the same size as Provorov, right? So he's not that big, but he plays a little bit bigger.
Plays
He's
aggressive.
he's a right-handed defender. So yeah, he's got I'm sorry, actually. No, I got it right. 3 goals, 7 assists. He's a +6 on the year. So 10 points in 18 games. I mean, that's top 4 defenseman worthy. And
I
over the
believe
past 3 games. I'm sorry, and I'll let you chime in. He has 1 goal, 3 assists, plus 4 of the past 3 games.
Yeah, he's really going off. I believe his highest point total is either around like 24 to 27 range, something like that in his career.
I
So
actually got that wrong. Sorry.
he's on pace to
Exceed that.
smash that, which is, I mean, who really knew if he was ever going to get back to that level or really even establish himself as a top four option again after the knee surgery and then kind of, being the odd man out in LA. But I think what it is for Walker, and I mean, obviously Tortorella is telling his defenders, and they want the defense core in general, him and Bradshaw, to be aggressive. But he is a guy that has the skill set to play that way and not
Yes,
get
he
burned
does.
with his skating ability.
You're
But
right.
it's not just the skating; it's just his play reading. He's picking the right opportunities and the right moments to jump up versus not. Because if you don't time that correctly, it can come back to bite you as a defenseman. You have to know when to jump into the play there. So his anticipation and just play reading has been, really good so far. His aggressiveness, obviously.
I'm sorry.
And Walker currently, like, he's on a 4-game point streak.
Yes.
And has 6 points over that span. So he's got 2 assists obviously in this game, and I believe he played 19 minutes and 49 seconds. So he was, I think, second or third in ice time. York with 20-34 was second. Sanheim 24-28. So that's not too surprising.
It was an even spread amongst defensemen. I'm sorry to cut you off. So 1 goal, and I would just want to correct what I said. It's 1 goal, 5 assists, plus 4 over those 4 games. And sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there.
No worries. I think, yeah, exactly. Like, the defense does definitely get evenly spread out. Like, Sealer almost has 20 minutes as well, 1938. Yep. So it kind of makes sense. Sanheim and York are your top pairing. They're gonna have the bigger minutes there. Then Sealer and Walker playing together, and they are in the 19 range. And Belpedio and Zamula both have the exact same ice time of 15:47, which is actually crazy. I don't know if I've ever seen that before, but that's just a funny coincidence.
That's a great observation. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Finish. No, it's all you, Yariv.
Okay. You mentioned Cam York, and I just wanted to build on that. So he had a goal and an assist, that empty netter goal, but good for him. It's been a little bit since he scored, but over the past 5 games, what did he have tonight? Was he a +1? I think. Yeah, he was a +1. So over the past 5 games, he is a +3 with 1 goal, 2 assists. He's obviously trending in the right direction. That's all pretty much since the benching.
Yeah, he's been playing better.
He's been playing vastly better. Again, I think it's important to remember how young he is. Like, everybody's like jumping on we should have drafted David Juracek. And if you're paying attention to how Cutter Gauthier is playing, no, we shouldn't have. And again, this is not a knock on David Juracek. The reason I wanted to bring that up, he's being slid between the AHL, NHL. They obviously want to bring him up, but he's young. It's going to take him time. Same thing with somebody like York. Like, people might be expecting him to already walk in and be the man on this team. And this is why I hated what John Buccigross said. And I jumped on him early in the season from that ESPN broadcast where he said York is by far the best defenseman on the fight. It's like, you were not paying attention. You did not do your homework. That was not a true statement. He is potentially maybe going to be the best defenseman on the team, but I also don't think we knew that Sanheim was going to play the way he is
or
right
Walker,
now.
For that matter.
Or Walker. Yeah, absolutely. But York is really, he's improving a lot. He had that one kind of breakaway that he kind of gave up later in the game, where I think he probably shouldn't have pinched there. He should have played a little safer, but he did actually do a really good job slowing the play down. I think with him, he still has to get a little bit better at picking his battles. He's still overly aggressive in the wrong spots. And I think really that's the only thing that hurts him.
That comes with experience though, right? Like,
exactly. Go ahead, please.
It's all playing through it and just learning. But I do think York has been on the rise the last few games. Mm-hmm. You've seen, his ice time consistently almost be matched to Sanheim, or in the 20s here over this 5-game win streak. So it shows the coach is confident in his play, confident to put him out there. He had a really nice breakup of a 2-on-1 actually in yesterday's game against Vegas, but today I thought he was solid. Some good defensive zone positioning in general. In this one, I would say the Flyers never really felt to me like they were really kind of losing control of the game at any point.
I don't think so either.
They get the first goal. They have the lead essentially the whole game. It does get tied at points throughout, but there's never a point in this one where the Blue Jackets lead. They do outshoot them 26 to 2. They outshoot them in the first and second periods. They do get outshot in the third period 6-4, but I mean that's kind of understandable considering you're a Blue Jackets team that I believe they are now 0-9-1 or something like that in their last stretch of games. So they have not won in a long time. So obviously they're going to put the urgency on in the
And they're not a
third.
bad team, too. Like, I wouldn't say
No,
that they play to that record.
no, exactly. They've been in a lot of close games, I believe, over the past, I think, stretch that they've lost here.
One
Multiple
goal.
games have been one goal
Yeah.
losses. Like yesterday, they lost by one to Washington. So they've been in
Who's playing
games.
exceptional right now. They're 8-1 and
Yeah,
1 in their
exactly.
last 10.
Yes, Washington and the Flyers are both really going off on a run here, just in the last stretch. But yeah, Columbus, they haven't necessarily been a bad team. They just haven't been a team that's really been able to score as much as maybe was predicted, just with Johnny Gaudreau. Obviously, Patrick Laine scratched in this one, which was a surprise to me. But that affects them, I would say, just in terms of goal scoring. But the Flyers, just back to kind of the point here, like the
Sure.
Flyers like I said, they didn't really have a point where they lost control of the game. Sure, there were stretches where the Blue Jackets, controlled play for a little bit, but the Flyers always rebounded well. I would say specifically that shorthanded goal kind of really set things in the other direction for them and kind of really put them firmly in
Yes.
control. And that shorthanded goal actually puts them in the league. So now they have 5 shorthanded goals this season and they're first in the
We,
NHL.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but we said that that would be the Flyers' weapon. We
Yeah,
saw the
their penalty
forward group
kill.
and we're
Yeah.
like, that could be a weapon for this team. Totally, I love that you brought that up. I'm sorry. I cut you off.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, it's even guys that you're not specifically expecting that were going to be on the penalty kill. Like we did know that Garnet Hathaway would be there. We did know Ryan Paling would be there, but I mean, Sean Walker once again, coming up big on the PK. He kind of starts that whole 2-on-0 off, just with
Yep.
the outlet pass. So it
Great
just
play.
shows, the Flyers on the penalty kill obviously have been really effective throughout the whole season. Their power play, I mean, is even heating up obviously with 3 goals over the last 2 games. But I did want to read this out. So this was actually tweeted out by NHL Network at about 3 p.m. Earlier today.
Sure.
And it goes over, the Flyers stats throughout this 4-game winning streak. So it might be even higher now that it's over here, but it just kind of puts it in perspective the way they've been playing, their ability, to really score and kind of keep their goals against down throughout the stretch. That's been a real key for them. But yeah, so their goals per game over the 4-game win streak was 4.25. Goals against the game 2.25. The power play 16.7%. The penalty kill 81.2%. So they've really just been clicking on a lot of different areas. I mean, their 5-on-5 play, I would say, even tonight, has been their strongest. They're just controlling games at 5-on-5, just
Mm-hmm.
with their forecheck, but also it's the transitions, like the transition offense. And Tortorella even
100%.
mentioned it after the Vegas win that they're just capitalizing on those transition chances. Defensemen are really outletting the puck up quickly. They're able to, rush through the neutral zone and enter the zone, usually with controlled uh, or controlled zone entries and keep, control of the puck. And from there, they're creating scoring chances off the rush through transition. So it's really been the 5-on-5 play and that transition offense that's kind of been fueling this 5-game win streak. And it comes up tonight again because there's 3 separate goals where the Flyers are scoring in transition, and essentially that leads to the goals. Really, them being able to put the puck in positions quickly, move the puck up ice quickly, and score. So that happens on Farabee's first goal, Paling shorthanded goal, another transition play, and even Konechny's goal. Belpedio wins a board battle in his own end. Throws it up ice, finds Konechny, and he snipes it short side, and that was a beautiful one as well. So
Yeah.
the Flyers really just been clicking. And I mean, against Columbus, I would say probably an inferior team to them. I was expecting them to win this one after the
Yeah,
last.
I did. I did too. Actually had the title written before the game started, and I had the Flyers winning 5 in a row. So, I did expect them to win today as well. Just the way they've been playing. Before we should touch on the offense a little bit, but I do want to point out Louis Belpedio is a +6 on the year, and
That's
Yegor
pretty good.
Zamula is a +11.
Yeah.
Talk about taking advantage and being played right in the situations you're in. Again, one of these guys are probably going to be benched. As Stahl comes in, I don't think they're rushing to get Stahl back in the lineup at all.
I think
But
at this
again,
point they're going to keep it status quo potentially.
yeah, probably for the next game. But you will see a guy who's been playing well sit a game, just like you're seeing with the forwards. Again, Frost did not deserve to be benched. Right?
No, he had 4 points in his last 4 games, right?
Exactly.
So it shows he was playing well. I will say about the Frost benching, taking him away, placing Lawton between Tippett and Atkinson, I will say you could see that that affected both of their play. They didn't create as much offense tonight.
Well, not only that, I actually think Cam Atkinson had his worst game tonight. He had 2 ugly turnovers, unnecessary plays. Not normal of him. I wouldn't say he played terrible or anything, but not his best game tonight at all. I thought Tippett actually played really well. He kind of just didn't score.
He was taking over just in terms of like the puck control, flying up the ice.
And that's the only thing I would say is like I think Tortorella probably has to be a little more open to sitting Delorier, even though Delorier also played well, also added that fight. Could have been a game. Again, he's a momentum guy. I'm not shitting on him at all, but I think we do have to be open to like what is a fourth line of Scott Lawton, Noah Cates, and Hathaway. Like what the hell? Like think about that as a fourth line tonight.
Yeah.
You can pummel teams with that. And maybe if it was playoffs, maybe they would consider that. Sorry,
I will say too, like Joel Farabee only gets 12-24 of ice time.
He looked so good tonight.
Ryan Poehling 13-51. And
Delorier only played 8 minutes though.
And Bobby Brink only gets 11 minutes 32. So that line that really looked like their best actually did not get a lot of ice time.
Hilarious, right?
Which is pretty crazy. Even Tippett only gets 13:53.
I think that was a consequence of the Flyers kind of blowing their lead a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if you look at TK, who played the most of any forward, Coots didn't even play. Coots only played 16.
20.
Yeah. And TK played 20 minutes. Now, he deserved that. And he had that huge goal where he took advantage of a bad line change by Columbus. But I think he was pressing offensively a little bit and kind of relying a little bit on his top 6 line. But if you're going to put Scott Lawton in the middle of that line of Tippett and Atkinson, is it really a top 6 line anymore? Like it kind of makes more sense with Frost there, but
makes more of a third line.
Yes. Again, this is something I feel like a lot of people are frustrated with, but this is a defensive first team. Look at the way they play. They play best with D. All of their
lead.
All of their centermen tonight are all defensive first guys. So Tortorella does have a bias for defense. That is true. But he does reward the offensive game. Like Frost will be back in there. I honestly wouldn't even be surprised if he'll be back in next game. Yeah. I don't know who they bench or anything like that, but I don't think it's very fair to keep Frost out of the lineup because he was actually playing very well before he was taken out of the lineup. Like he didn't deserve. It wasn't like he had an off game or something. You could justify it. But then again, the guy who he put in for him, Bobby Brink, scored a big goal tonight, right? So it's like it's hard to. I do think Tortorella is doing a good job with this. I just hope it's being communicated, which I suspect it might not be, at least from him, enough to the players. I just hope it's really communicated. It's almost like when I had a problem with Ersson starting the season with the Flyers, where I'm like, why don't you just tell the guy, look, you made the team. We want you to go down there, get ready. As soon as there's a backup game, as soon as there's a rotation for that other goaltender, we're actually going to call you up.
Yeah.
Like you're going to play over Sandstrom. Just be like, communicate that extra bit. And maybe I'm naive a little bit, but that needs to be communicated with Frost, right? Like, did he have a conversation with Frost to be like, hey, you played really well?
It's all behind closed doors. I believe Tortorella mentioned in one of his pressers that, when guys are sitting, it's not because they necessarily did something wrong, it's just because they want to get different looks in.
Right.
I think the consequence of this is you want to get Brink back in after a few games not getting into any action. Essentially, what I did notice though is at least from yesterday's game, like Frost's ice time also was pretty limited. I think he's only about like 13, 14 minutes or something like that. But then also another thing is too, that late penalty that he takes in the third period. I saw that happen.
That's it.
And in my mind, I thought to myself,
it's
a 3-3 game, late penalty, something Tortorella's not going to like. I kind of had a hunch that if anybody was going to be out for Brink, it would be Frost again. And it also goes back to the fact that it's pretty evident that he's not, Torrell's favorite player in
That
comparison
yeah.
to some of the others
But
here.
But
So
he loves Paling and he sat Paling for a bunch too.
yeah,
I do agree. I
exactly.
do agree with you. I do agree with your statement. But I do think even he's trying to take his own bias out of it. Maybe
He's
he's
trying to work
including them.
everybody in to is what it seems like to me though. Like you get Paling scratched for a bit, you get Brink
Yes.
scratched for a bit. Frost really is the only constant, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see Paling out again at some point. We see Brink out again at some point.
I do wonder though, I don't want I the one thing I don't like, and I get the role for Delorier. He deserves to be in the lineup. He's played really well. He's actually had a lot of scoring opportunities of late
Yeah,
too. But I don't think they can be afraid to take him out of the lineup every now and then too. Right? If you're
I
gonna
agree.
bench other guys, like bench the guy that's getting the least amount of ice time
Just
on your
due to the
team.
role he plays as well. Like, I
Right.
mean,
Like, do you need a guy like that in every game?
no.
Why not try the lineup with Frost in, with Paling in, with Lawton, playing on the fourth? Like, imagine that fourth line,
I hope we
you
do
know?
see that at some point. I don't know if it's going to happen. I mean, he played what Deloria played 80 out of 82 games last season, I believe. I don't know those reason he missed the other two. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but like
Yeah.
it seems as though I mean Torrell is going to use him if he has the chance. But I
He
do agree with you that
he's clearly great on the bench, which we don't
yeah,
hear. I would imagine
exactly.
that's a big reason for, and
That's a
people might not
factor.
like that, but there, I brought this up in the I'm sorry to cut you off, but I brought this up in the beginning of the year. When the team plays physical, and it's an intimidation game. People might not like that, but it's a big part of the game. When they play
Yeah,
physical, it allows the non-physical players to play their game, right?
definitely.
It does because they don't have to be intimidated, right? Like we
Well,
saw what happened to Travis Sanheim over the years. Now he's bigger and stronger. You can see he's much more likely
gives
to
a
stand up for
level of
himself.
relief to your players knowing that okay, if there's a big hit against or something happens on the ice, we have Delorier that is going to stand up for us and kind of be the one who is going to get into those physical bouts. Get into those scrums and not really afraid of the other team. Whereas without him, there are still some physical guys, but the Flyers aren't as
Hathaway, Lawton.
yeah, but the Flyers aren't nearly as intimidating, right? And that also stops, other teams from taking cheap shots. Like it's not, it's something that can be overlooked quite often, especially
Yeah.
if you, let's say, aren't really too familiar with, how physical it can really be on the ice, right? Like
That,
sometimes guys will take liberties. A guy like Delory is going to stop that from happening. Yeah, I mean, you can not believe it as much as you want,
it's
but
absolutely true.
it's the truth.
It's the
Yeah.
absolute truth. I mean, the players themselves say it. So like
Yeah.
you can argue with, you can argue with Torres, you can argue with us. It's irrelevant. The players themselves want a guy like Delorier in the lineup.
To
And
caveat though,
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, your best lineup would just in terms of pure skill would be him on the bench.
Yes, will be him watching the team because again, like you put Frost with Tippett and Atkinson. Maybe you move Lawton in with Paling, even though he played really well instead of Paling.
Well,
That's your third line, and then you have Paling, Cates, and Hathaway as a fourth line.
that's what I mean.
You
Or
know,
even
I
Paling Lawton
and
potentially and
Hathaway,
Hathaway. Yeah.
and it's like you're talking
That's like
about
a third line almost.
yes. Now I'm not even saying they have to do that because right now there's really no reason to even
Yeah, they're
jump to that
won
conclusion.
5 in a row. So all the, no matter what we do and what we say and what we could critique
It's
essentially.
working.
Yeah, exactly.
It,
So no matter what, if you don't like that Tortorella's, scratching Bobby Brink and then putting Frost in and vice versa, scratching Frost and getting Bobby Brink in,
how do you
nonetheless, no
scratch
matter,
Forrester
yeah, especially just the way the top line's
defensively,
playing,
but
yeah,
also defensively the way he's playing? He's outplaying Brink defensively. He's
just board
physical as hell.
battles.
He finally scores. I mean, like people might not like it, but I agree with Tortorella a lot of times. I'm a big intangibles guy. Actually, over the years, I've been talking about it nonstop. Where I was saying this team can play better regardless of the talent they have. And like guys like Louis Belpedio look like legitimate NHL defenders.
Yeah,
Our rookie is plus 11. You know what I mean? Like these are details. Like yes, he's not playing the best players on the opposition, but it's showing when he's playing against those bottom six forwards.
he can
You
handle
know,
it.
he's coming out on top every night. Every night he's a plus one.
But I mean, yeah, I just want to say, like, all the lineup decisions, whether you like them or not, it's resulting in wins. The
Yes.
last 5 games have been wins, so they're working. So there's, even though you might not agree with them, you can't say that they aren't decisions that are actually having a benefit. So
Yes. And this is what I think is being misconstrued. And I'll say this because this, and I'm not going to name any media people specifically, but because it's not fair to them, for one. I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but I hear a lot of surface level arguments about a rebuild, like thinking that a rebuild is finding the players through the draft. That is not what a rebuild is. And Tortorella referenced this in his press conference. The rebuild is changing the organization. If you're older, which I know the majority of our audience are, you have worked in a work environment. What happens when you don't have good management and the process that you're working with is not good? People who are talented at their jobs will literally do worse. The rebuild is the process internally. That's why he keeps talking about a standard. It's the process in which this team operates has improved. That is the rebuild. So when you bring in a Cutter Gauthier, he fits in nicely. When you bring in a Mitch Cobb, they fit in nicely. They have a role. Like, we need guys on the power play who are big time shooters. You can see where those guys fit in the lineup. And I think that's the real rebuild. There are plenty of young players in this organization. You guys might not like them. You might like other ones more in other teams. How many of you predicted that Louis Belpedio would be effective? You know, how many
well, yeah, he's
people
been
gave up on
AHL.
Zamula?
Yeah, exactly, right. Like Belpedio's been an AHL defenseman largely his whole career. Zamula's been a guy that they spent years now developing, so it's kind of this is a make or break for him specifically. But when you look at it for the Flyers here, like and just the way that they've been playing, and obviously you don't want to get ahead of yourself. It's still only 18 games in, but 18 games is not a small sample size in my opinion. Like typically, and we said this on the podcast that 20 games is about a stretch you could take and look at and say, well, this is you know a good amount of data. This is kind of what the team is at this point, and we're really close to that. And I do have some stats here I wanted to read out just about expected goals percentage.
Yeah.
So this was posted today by JFresh, and he does a great job just with all the stats and kind of advanced metrics. And the Flyers are 8th overall in the whole league in 5 versus 5 expected goals percentage against. So that means they're only giving up 2.31 expected goals against per 60. So not only are they playing really well offensively, but they're playing well defensively too here. This is for the whole season. And then their 5-on-5 expected goals percentage in general is 52.7%, placing them at 11th overall in the league. Yeah. So it just shows in both situations, right, in terms of creating high danger chances, controlling play, they're a top 11 team right now in the league. And in terms of goals against and expected goals against them, they're also a top 10 team here in the league. So the process is there. It's not like prior seasons or other stretches where the Flyers are pulling out wins, but it's the goaltending that's really saving their bacon here. The team actually process wise is playing better, and I mean, if you're watching the games, you can see that just in terms of the shot totals. They're typically out shooting teams on an every night basis. I believe over this stretch, only the Carolina game was the one game that they got outshot. So
yeah, and look, they lost to Carolina 3-2. They beat Carolina. They lost to Vegas 3-2. They beat Vegas. They lost to the Sharks in overtime, right? They probably could have beat the Ducks if they would have. I'm not even sure what happened in that game. Right,
but they beat them later.
But they beat them to beat the Ducks. They lost to the Sharks in a game where people could disagree with me, but they definitely outplayed the Sharks. Sharks just had luck on their side, in my opinion. They were lost 10 in a row. They finally got their shit together a little bit now. Now they're at least competitive.
Even the Kings, right? Like they lost to the Kings a couple weeks ago, 5-0, and they beat them. So a bit of a revenge
and the Kings too. Yeah, absolutely. I think good call.
Three, like I said, top tier teams they lose to, then they beat. But what it is too, and I think it goes back to what you were saying that kind of building out the culture, building the standard in a sense. But it's also just learning how to win, learning how to play in certain situations. Like it is a young team, no matter what people want to say with Couturier and Atkinson coming back. There's a ton of young players on this team that are 25 and under, and they have not been in all situations or played in all scenarios at the NHL level. So learning how to win, learning how to take losses as they did previously, and then change certain things within their game to get back to winning ways. It's all things that we've kind of seen from them so far this season. Even like you said, losing to teams earlier in the year and then beating them again. That's all a learning process, right?
Yes. And I want to go back to, I don't even know how many episodes, and at least at a year, right? Probably the beginning of last year. We were talking about the Boston Bruins, and I was talking to somebody high up, or at least not high up, somebody who's very prominent in the media, right? You guys would all know him by name. I don't like naming people on here. We were talking about Boston. His thought was, "Oh, Boston lost their two best players. I don't know. They're not going to be." I said, "No, I expect them to be still one of the best teams in the league." I was like, because they have the process internally, they have the next man up mentality, and they have a really good process there. Look at Boston. They're the best team in the league again after losing their best player, arguably, and one of their top players. And yet they're still doing it. That is what a rebuild is. Primarily, the players, you can get lucky in the draft. You find guys later. You don't have to pick in the top 5. And the hockey gods rewarded us with Michkov. He's a generational talent. So, those pieces are already in place. The only thing I think this team is missing is another top defender. And right now, the way Sean Walker is playing makes it all right. We haven't even seen Risto. I know people probably think Risto stinks. Look at how many of these defensemen are playing well. You can't even imagine how Risto would be playing. This is an undersized defense, and our two biggest defensemen are out of the lineup. So, I don't know. I'm seeing good stuff here. I still see a wild card. A wild card team. If they continue doing this trajectory and keep improving, maybe it'll even be more than that. Maybe they'll fall below that. And if they do, and they're out of the playoffs early, the team will act accordingly, and then you will see them pick up assets. But I don't suspect that'll happen. I think they're going to be in that playoff race all year round. Maybe they miss it, by a hair at the end. That could definitely happen. That might piss people off. But that is what you really need to do to rebuild your culture. And then you come in and you make moves in the off. Look, we already have too many players. Gives you the opportunity now to make a trade. Package a couple young guys. Get something you need. Get a top pick. I don't know. But you got Cutter Gauthier, who's a goal a game in NCAA right now. You have Michkov, who's generational. These guys are coming over, right?
So there are opportunities.
This is what you want to see, that the team plays well, and then you can fill in the real gaps. This is how you know what your real weaknesses are. If the whole team is a goddamn mess the way they were before Tortorella comes here, you don't even really know what to fix. But when everybody is playing their role and playing it well, you can be like, oh, well, let's improve the power play. Let's go out and get that guy. Or let's hope that Cutter Gauthier can fill that in. But
the Flyers, they're definitely clicking. They're on the same page. They're rolling on this 5-game winning streak. There's no telling, how it's going to continue. Even Tortorella mentioned in his press conference yesterday, right? There's going to be dips, right? There's highs and there's lows. I think right now this team is obviously playing to their top capabilities, probably the best we could say maybe that this roster might be able to put forth. But who knows? It's still a young season, so you never know how long this winning streak
with
can
young
continue.
Players. With young players who could improve.
With young players, but what it really is important is that they're learning how to win. They're learning how to close out games. So later on, in similar circumstances, they can kind of apply this knowledge. And like I said, it's against teams that are competitive teams, that are good teams. The most important thing is, we don't expect this team, to be a cup contender or to be making noise in the playoffs or anything like that. Like we said, we both mentioned, before the season started, we expect them to be in that playoff mix, potentially wild card or sniffing around that area, but to be much improved. And I would definitely agree that they are much improved based on what we've seen through the 18-game sample size so far. And I would expect that there will be dips, but I'm interested to see kind of how they respond with this kind of knowledge that they've gained throughout a win streak like this. When you're beating teams that are actually upper echelon in the league, that's things you can draw from when you're having tough times later on in the season as well. So like we're saying, right, it's all a learning process for a young team, but there's definitely positives to look at, and there's definitely when you take into account the fact that the Flyers, have kind of beaten teams like Vegas, like Carolina, like LA, there's really, I don't think any team that they cannot play with in the league at this point, right?
We'll see how they match up against a team like Boston who plays their style.
That's true,
which you can make the argument that Carolina and Vegas do too, right? I'm not I'm not saying the tests haven't been there, but I
But
think
I
it's
think it's a
very
different.
promising.
Yeah, it's a change from last year where these upper echelon teams you could see the Flyers were outmatched, whereas this year
They
they can
relied
actually
on
play with.
heart.
Yeah, this year they can play with them, so it's obviously a good step for them to take. And I do think, even though the Flyers are at a high right now, they'll probably settle down a bit. But like I said, I think they're going to be right in the mix, for the playoffs. And even being in a race like that with the young players that they have on the team, it's such a good learning experience for them to be playing meaningful games. I know everybody is, yelling, okay, top 10 pick, but you have 2 draft picks in the first round. I think it's more valuable for this team to have their younger players actually play meaningful games in March,
Yes.
versus be so far out of the playoff realm that the games don't matter anymore, right? I think it's
Yeah.
good for these younger guys to get that type of experience. So
Yes. And again, the only thing we'd really be searching for in a top 10 pick at this point is a defenseman.
yeah,
Which again, most of them
but
most top defensemen are not built
that's
in the
what I
top
mean
10
though with two
anyway.
firsts, right? Like let's say you got your 2 firsts, you can always package those and move up to target a guy that you really want. But I don't see anybody really mentioning that. But that's something you got to do with your assets, right? So even if they do finish, let's say like and pick 15th or 16th in the draft, just sneak into the playoffs or just miss the playoffs potentially.
Mm-hmm.
You have 2 picks, who knows what you can do with that. So I think that's something to take into consideration too, that kind of people aren't really mentioning or bringing to the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's call it at that. Great game by the Flyers. Again, 5 in a row. Wild card spot. Let's go. Anything you want to leave our fans with?
No, just it's great to watch entertaining hockey, and we've kind of gotten lucky enough to see that over the last stretch, and hopefully we see it continue here. But the Flyers are rolling. This is probably the best we've seen them play in years at this point. So
Hell yeah. I second that. All right. Thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back with our normal episode next time video goes up. And we love you guys. And remember, always stay great.